everybody. My name is Sarah Shelton.
And I'm Paxton Hyman.
And the comprehension strategy that we will be teaching you today is questioning.
So the standards that we have picked are aligned to a 4th grade standard. Our first one is refer to details and examples in text when explaining what the text says explicitly and when drawing inferences from the text. And our second one is determine the main idea of text and explain how it is supported by key details, which is summarizing.
So, what is effective questions? So these are questions that master keys of understanding. They're also questions that clarify confusion to students, and questions that propel us forward and take us deeper into our reading.
And why do we use this strategy? There are multiple reasons, but during reading it helps the reader stay engaged. It keeps us reading. It monitors comprehension, interacts us with the text to construct meaning, creates developed readers, and it also helps with predictions. And we can also use this strategy in topics other than reading, just like in our discussion today. Barb was saying like how we use questioning to like go off of everything. You know, it can go into social responsibility, it can go into anything, and that's like what learning is based off of, is questions. So I think this is a great strategy to be using.
So these are our references. So of course we use the strategy workbook that we have for the specific class, and then we also use The Uglies by Scott Westfield. So we're going to be using that for our lesson today.
Alright, so the kind of lesson that we're going to be doing with you guys is the more we learn, the more we wonder. So it is pretty much you are looking at something that you know or you are learning, and then you can form questions off of that. And as Sarah said, we're going to be using the text from The Uglies. So I'm going to start by reading the first passage, and you guys can just listen along and kind of like think about the text, and we will form questions of about the text that we read. So looking back at the shore, Tally realized that she had been carried away from her camp by the river's current. She swam a few strokes upstream, then trudged down toward the rocky shore. Waist high in the water, already shivering from the breeze on her wet body, Tally heard something that made her heart freeze. Something was coming. Something big. So as I read that, I'm like wondering, what the heck is Tally doing in the water? Like, why is she hiding in the water? I'm also kind of wondering to myself, what is coming after her? Like, is it a human? Is it a vehicle? Is it an animal? And she said that it's something big, so I'm wondering if she sees it or if she's just hearing things, like hearing the noises. You know, I'm kind of wondering, like, what's going on with that?
Okay, so think about these specific questions while I read the next passage for you. And so we'll get started. Thunder came from the sky like a giant drum beating fiercely and fast, forcing its way into her head and chest. It seemed to rattle the whole horizon, making the surface of the river shimmer with every thud. Tally crouched low in the water, sinking to her neck just before the machine appeared. It came from the direction of the mountains, flying low and kicking up dust in a dozen separate windstorms in the wake. It was much bigger than a hover car and 100 times louder. Apparently, without magnets, it beat the air into submission with a half-invisible disc shimmering in the sun. So, now we would like to ask for some volunteers to possibly think of any questions they have from this specific second passage.
No one had any questions from the passage? Like, what was going on through your mind? What were you guys thinking as Sarah read this? Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, just the part about magnets kind of confused me, and if that's like something that's normal, I guess, in their society.
Yeah, like what the heck is a magnet? Taylor, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just thinking, what is it? Because it kind of, and that to me made me think of like aliens.
So.
Okay, so on that topic, can we go back and revisit questions that we had from the previous passage? Like, what is coming? Do we know if it's an animal yet? Do we know if it's a human?
Have we possibly answered any questions that we created from our previous passage?
We know it's a machine.
We know
It's a machine,
right?
So now we know that it's probably not an animal and it's probably not a human. So now we can kind of cross this one out because we might not know exactly what's coming, but we know that it's not an animal and we know that it's not a human. But we can still form more questions about what's going on in this passage.
Oh, I was gonna say, do we know why she's in the water now?
She's hiding.
She's hiding?
She's hiding. But, so yes, we have kind of answered this, but there's still not a clear answer as to why she's in the water. So,
Now, so now we are going to pass out a worksheet for you guys. The title of it is The More We Learn, the More we wonder. So, as we ask questions, when we're reading the passage, we intend to learn more information, become more curious with what we're reading. So, I'll pass these out to you guys.
so when you guys get this, I will switch the passage to passage 3, and I will also read this one aloud to you. And then, after I'm done reading the passage, you can write in the first box into the text said, and then go over to it made me wonder. So the text said, you're going to kind of reference what text you heard, and then what questions arose from that text. And then, when you guys finish with those 2 boxes, it's going to kind of be on your own. I will switch the passage to passage 4. You guys can look up here and read it on your own, and then you can fill out the next 2 boxes. And when we're done with that, we will be able to give you some time to talk in your group. So right now, let's just focus on our individual work and being able to do it on our own. And then we will let you guys know when it's time to discuss. All right, so passage 3. Just before the sound reached her, Tally dragged herself into a full hover skid, her momentum crushing her down onto the board. The 2 hover cars shot past ahead, missing by a mile, but the wind of their passage spun her around in circles. The board flipped over and then back upright, Tally hanging on with both arms as the world spun widely around her.
So you guys can go ahead and maybe find a specific text that you like from this passage and write that down in the first box. And then in the second box that says that made me wonder, possibly write down any questions that you have about that passage.
And we'll kind of be wandering around, so if you have any questions, just let one of us know, and then we'll come up and switch to passage 4 once we see that you guys are ready.
Do you have any questions?
Alright, now I'm going to switch to passage 4, so as you're ready, you can go ahead and read this passage, and then fill out the next 2 boxes.
Today you want to need more time with passage 3?
guys did awesome keeping quiet during this individual work time. Now we're going to give you a couple minutes to kind of discuss with your group the different texts that you saw and questions that formed from it. And as you guys are discussing within your group, think of like a common question or something that came around a couple times, and then we're going to share at the end as a class. So go ahead and you guys can talk about the questions that you have.
So, the part that says the hover cars were headed straight for her, I was wondering why they were Yep, that's what I said.
Me too.
And what happens if they catch her? What happens if they catch her? And then it says the two hover cars shot past the head missing by a mile. I was wondering kind of what they look like.
The last sentence of the other one said, hanging on with both arms as the world's been widely around her. And I just didn't know if that meant like she was just hanging upside down, like she was spinning, or if it was metaphorical or something. I just didn't understand that sentence.
It's funny because you were in my video. Like,
I was
the next person filming in my video.
I know, I feel like I'm always right. Yeah.
It's like your face is always like in that like side of the video.
So now we're gonna ask you. So now we're gonna ask you guys to pick one specific common question that you had as a table group, and then share that with the class. So who would like to go first?
Okay, so our table group, most of us had the same question. That the part it says the hover cars were headed straight for her. We're wondering like why they were headed for her, or like what was gonna happen if they caught her.
Okay, that's a good question. Did anyone have that same question? You guys did? How about another question? Did anyone else have the same question that they would like to share?
About Melody, JC, and Mary Beth's table.
Melody and I read it. Yeah. The question was just like, why is she trying to escape from them? Like, what has she done to make them not her?
So, do we think that the more that we're going to read the next few passages, the more that we'll learn, understand what's actually going on? But these questions are good to help us set up for what we're going to learn later on in the book. So, well, thank you guys. You were very helpful today with our lesson. Just to kind of come back and finish up, can someone please tell me what strategy we learned today? Questioning, right. And then can somebody please tell me why questioning is important when we read?
It helps us to look for answers later on.
Yeah, it helps us look for answers while we're reading.
And it helps us make connections to whatever we're reading to.
Right, it does help us make connections while we're reading. So if you guys are still curious about learning more about questioning, you guys can go back and reference our work strategy book. It's page 111, I believe. So
Easy to remember, 111.
so yeah, if you guys want to go back and reference anything else about the specific strategy, that's where you can find it. So
For
thank
15
you for your
minutes.
time, guys.